Hello everyone. Let us look at customer cohort analysis. Extremely important topic. As a part of customer segmentation, we want to look at our customers and break them into different cohorts. For example, in this case, we have about 50,000 transactions with us, and we have the data for 4 years, 2011, 12, 13 and 14. Now, there are a lot of questions that would come to your mind. For example, customers who purchased in 2011, are they still around? Are they loyal? Are they still purchasing? Is their purchase increasing or decreasing? What is the sort of customer churn? How many customers did we lost? If we lost a customer, did we recover the customer in another year? So the idea is that by looking at the cohort, I can identify whether my oldest customers, which are in 2011, are they still around? And if they are still around, what is their contribution to the business? So before we make a pivot table, the first thing I want to do is to look at the customer acquisition year. That means I want to understand in which year did we acquire the customer. So equal to min if s. My min range would be column A. My criteria would be column B. And we are searching for B2. Let us convert this column into a date. And as you can see, it tells me, if I drag it down, that this is the date on which that customer was acquired. If we drag the formula all the way down, it will tell us when the customer was acquired. As an example, if I look at the row 51253, which is Erica Byrne, you can see that Erica made a purchase in December on the 31st, but her acquisition date is the 7th of June 2011. From this, we want to separate the year component because that's what we're interested in. And let's convert the entire column into a number. It tells us the year. So if you look at this part, you will notice that some have been acquired in 2011, some have been acquired in 2012, and so on and so forth. We also add a text called year in front of this. The reason I'm doing this is so that we don't confuse the year with the order date that we have. This is the final formula. Let's select the entire data and make a pivot table. So insert pivot table. And now in the pivot table, we want to keep order date in rows. Then we want to keep the customer acquisition year in columns. And finally, we want to keep the customer ID in values. As you can see, it adds up to become 51290. I'm just making everything center aligned and making them the same width so that you can see it clearly. As you can see, it tells us that in 2011, we have 8,998 customers who also belong to the 2011 cohort. Now, if you look at 2012, it tells us 7,025. Then we have 3,937. So what is it telling us? It is telling us the number of transactions. So in 2011, we have 8,998 transactions. Then we have 7,025 transactions. The important thing is that this is the same set of customers that we are talking about. That means the original 2011 cohort, which was 8,998, has now become 7,025 only. So the same set of customers have only purchased 7,025 times. But then how do you find the number of unique customers? Let me go back to the data. To find the distinct count, we need Power Pivot. If you do not see this on your Excel, please go to File and Options, select Add-ins, go to Manage and select COM Add-ins and click on Go. Once you have done that, select Power Pivot for Excel. Remember, this is only available on Excel desktop, not available on the online version. Once you have done that, again select the data, insert pivot table and a pivot table. But this time, you will have to select the last option, which says that you want to add this data to the data model. Now the pivot that is created looks exactly the same. So we can put our order date in rows, the customer acquisition year in columns, and the customer ID in values. You must be wondering, isn't it the same result? The difference is that since we have added it to the data model, you will notice that we have an option to count and we also have an option to do a distinct count. So let me go to value field settings, scroll down and select distinct count. Now remember, this option would not come if you make a normal pivot table. You have to make a pivot table using the data model and Power Pivot. Now this is very nice because it tells me that 2,890 customers purchased in 2011 and they form the 2011 cohort. Out of the 2,890, only 1,949 purchased in 2012. That means we lost some customers. But then we recovered some customers, it became 2,187, and we recovered some more, which is 2,387. I'm going to copy the table one more time. And this time, remove the customer ID distinct count and put the sales value. This again is telling us that the 2011 cohort contributed 2.25 million, 1.76, 2.21 and 2.85, which is excellent, right? Because this means that the same set of customers who were there in the 2011 cohort, even though they decreased their purchase the next year, they have since then been increasing their purchase. Let's try to present the data visually. So I will click on Insert and create the third one, which is a stat 100% stat column chart. And as you can see, very nicely, it is telling me that in 2011, we had 2.25 million. The 2011 cohort did 1.76, then 2.21, and then finally 2.85. That means that in 2012, 13, and 14, their contribution to the business has been mostly around 65%. The sign of concern here is the 2012 cohort. The 2012 cohort had a contribution of over 30% the year they joined, but in the subsequent 2 years, their contribution has been declining, which is something for the business to look at. So remember, you first have to write the formula to find the customer acquisition year. Then you have to make a pivot table, keeping in mind that you have to select data model. This is very important if you want to find the distinct count. For the sales value is not required. You can do the sales value with the regular pivot table as well.